because this is something that the government hasn't focused on. It's all cash benefits, but not in terms of in-kind food support. How do we give more physical or actual support for people in their daily lives other than cash? So we saw reduced portions of meal size and the number of meals. Some people just drink tea instead of eating. And then there is also another problem is that people ration out nutritious food amongst their family member. So every day if it's like, oh, we have an egg today, who gets the egg? Which one in the family gets the egg? Do we give it to the elderly person or the sick person, or do we give it to the child? So it's a matter of like negotiating who gets what. A lot of the interviews, we found out that no one was eating eggs or milk because price hikes, and meat and fish was reduced to once or twice a week. Vegetables, again, it was a stipulated amount for a day. If it's 150 rupees, they just get a bunch of vegetables just for that meal for that day, and that's it. And if they were lucky, they would rely on home harvested vegetables. But then again, gardening in home was extremely costly after last year. In the insecurity that we found here was very interesting only because of the cost of living increase in terms of other aspects like utilities, education, medicine. Once those increased, people thought, okay, we have to forgo our meals just to pay off those bills because those will come and bite us back. So one thing that we found, one person, she actually said, then කන්න බොන්න අතහැරලා ණයනෝවි බිල් ටික ගෙවා ගන්න තමයි අපේ තියෙන අරමුණ. So our objective is to forgo eating just to pay our bills instead of going into debt. So food insecurity, on the other side, we have also a gendered aspect because it's a really high care burden on women. Sometimes it's not just women, because most of the women that we saw in our interviews were stay-at-home wives. So they take care of a lot of people in their families. And not only that, women, some in Batiklo also stated that it wasn't just taking care of your own children, but your neighborhood children also. If you are at home and your neighbor's child is just home alone without food, women would actually go and make sure that someone else's kid has food for that day. So this food insecurity, the food crisis, is an extreme burden for women and their community as well. So social protection here has been severely ignored. Then we come to the question of unbearable cost of living and the insufficient state benefits. So here we have put out a little bit of the costs on estimates for each family. We see food costs about 1,000 to 1,500 daily. So again, food cost was the daily expenditure. It wasn't something that you stock up for like a month or 2 weeks and then make food. Every day, whatever you earn, you sort of allocate it for food, and that was again a daily cost. So utilities are increasing extremely. Electricity costs about 3,000, and this was during January. So after March, February, it's definitely higher than this amount. Transport costs have increased threefold. So some don't even afford bus fares to the Samurdhi banks, which is about 3 to 4 kilometers if you are in Jaffna or Kilinochchi. And in Colombo, it's about, what we found, it was about 1 kilometer. But what they do is that they'd carpool in like a 3-wheeler and go together rather than go by themselves. Fuel, those who own 3-wheelers and drove 3-wheelers have stopped completely. That is, they've lost their means of income because of that. And like I expressed in the case before, fishing communities have been, their livelihoods have been extremely insecure. And a 5 kilogram LP gas is usually sustained for at least 3 months. Education, again, is the fees, school fees, and any expenses on children's work have increased. Approximately, they would spend about 3,000, 5,000 a month if they have two children in their household. Medicine, so state pharmacies gave up. I mean, there were shortages last year. So state pharmacies didn't give out medicine a lot, and people had to go buy through private pharmacies. There again, it will cost about 1,200 to 3,000 rupees, and most people, what they have resolve towards is buying medicine just for a month, and then the next month they don't have their medicine, and then going back when they ever have the money. So there's incredible insecurity here. Now, with compared to those costs, right now this is the standing rates of the benefits that people receive, the cash benefits. So Samurdhi costs about 1,500 to 4,000, but then again you have to notice that it reduces because of the deductibles for savings and group savings. So on average it would cost about 1,250 to 3,750 a month. And what most people do is they collect it for about 3 months and withdraw a bulk. So elders benefits also is up there, and PMA, that's the Ping Paddy, that costs about 300 to 350 rupees. Now a lot of people say that, okay, why are people getting this benefit? It's so little, it's so insignificant. But it's not just the monetary aspect, it's not just the monetary assistance that people care for. There is the group savings that is actually valuable for people, and most importantly, the fact that people can participate in collective support structures means that they have this sense of safety when things start crashing down. When the crisis happened, they didn't feel alone, because there are people in the same community, were in their same Samurdhi group. So there was a sense of collective safety, and that is the real value of social protection and social safety nets. We also asked them what kind of benefits you would want. Now this was an interesting question, because most of them were very reluctant to answer this, and they expressed their frustration. Like, we can't really ask for anything from the government because then we look like beggars. They themselves have identified that they have, if they ask for something, they'll be alienating themselves. And this is the narrative that people, especially think tanks and policymakers, have been, pushing with the Aswasuma program and the, social safety argument, is that they are just receiving handouts and we can't really ask for anything. We don't want to look poor because we are still working people. We earn something, and this is something that just supports us. And asking for something more is sort of like is seen as them, saying, okay, we are poor, so we don't want to look poor right now by asking. So a lot of them don't even ask how their current, Samurdhi works, how the deductibles work. They are afraid of asking from the state or the Samurdhi bank officer, because they are afraid if they ask questions, and too many questions, they'll get cut off from a list. There is that sense of fear amongst people. And yet when we asked these questions, what kind of support they wanted, the majority said food assistance in terms of subsidies and food distribution. Subsidized utility bills and moratoriums on bills was something else that they've asked. Cash assistance was still there because they had other cash expenses to make, like medicine, school, etc. So medical expenses, having assistance there or subsidies there. And most importantly, even when we got into the interviews, even when we wanted to talk to them, they were scared that if we talk about the problems with the system right now, will we be cut off? We want this sense of safety. We want to stay on this list. We want to stay on the current benefit scheme. Not only that, we still want it to increase, especially for disabled people and elders. Then we come to my final slide, that is on the current, the proposed welfare benefit scheme, the Aswasuma. Enumeration has been going on since January till about mid-April. This is how the new system will operate actually. So they have categorized people into 4 groups, and people get a stipend, for a monthly stipend, depending on a period of time. So some people get it until 31st December, that's just 6 months, and the rest will go on for 3 years. And there are 2 questions that we should pose about this new system is how have we categorized people into these 4 groups? What is the criteria, and is there transparency as to know how they fell into this group? There's a severe lack of that also. The government hasn't made any announcements as to, or publications as to how this works. So the categorization as to, like, as working people categorizing transitional, vulnerable, extremely poor in itself creates tension and degrades social cohesion, especially among people who were getting the same benefit and in the same Samurdi group at one point. Now villages will be sort of, they'll be broken down into people. Some people might get 2,500 while others will get 5,000 or 15,000 rupees a month. So it's incredible. The social impact of that has not been, accounted for. On the other side, the new system poses the second question: what happens to the Samurdi banks now once they introduce this? So people's savings are in these banks, group savings and the personal savings. How would these be distributed? These questions are still yet to be answered, and how would this happen transparently is something that we've been, fighting for.
Thanks, Madhulika. So just taking on from Madhulika here, I just want to say that there was a gazette that set out all the criteria, the questions that were asked of all in the assessment, and there was a calculation of how it was done, a formula by which it was calculated. But because of the criteria put down in the questionnaire itself, it was very individual beneficiaries, families, individuals were not able to assess whether simply having a tractor or a motorbike would just alienate them from the program, because those were the nature of questions. If you have walls, then you're not poor. If you have running water in your house, then you fall into that not poor category. So